Do you feel like your relationship is slipping away slowly? Do you feel like it's on the road to divorce or separation? It can feel really overwhelming and heartbreaking, leaving your relationship on the rocks and you feeling confused and helpless. In this video, I'm going to reveal the 7 stages of a dying relationship and how to recognize the signs before it's too late. So when you get that sense that your relationship is on the rocks, it can be really difficult to deal with. When a relationship is dying, we can often see the signs way too late, and that can lead to a really panicked state, leading to a lot of behavior that can cause a lot more damage. So it's important to recognize the early signs. So if your relationship is headed in the wrong direction, it's important to understand whereabouts you are on this journey in order for you to give your relationship the best chance of turning around. Because without proper intervention, small issues can grow into major conflicts, leading to parallel lives, constant arguments, ultimately resulting in separation or divorce if it's not addressed correctly. So if these stages of a dying relationship aren't recognized and addressed, the ultimate consequence of this is divorce or separation. So the first stage of a dying relationship is rationalization. So this is where initial problems such as being late, disorganized, drinking, they're often rationalized as stress or miscommunication. So this is where apologies are accepted and issues are often downplayed internally. And this leads to a lack of really seriously addressing these underlying problems. It leads you to overlook red flags. So this stage is where issues are kind of rationalized and are kind of excused out of the way and not really addressed. So this is where a discord, either an emotional discord or a logical discord, is brought up and maybe one partner apologizes and the other partner kind of passes it off, just saying, well, they're just under stress and that's it. And this sets a foundation for future issues. So the second stage is magical thinking. This is where you fall for the illusion that problems will simply resolve themselves. They just need time and they're never really addressed. This means that any persistent discords between you and your partner are simply wished away, but the stress and the disappointment of them still continue internally. So you kind of hope these problems disappear, but nothing is actually being actioned on them. This creates an illusion of hope that things are just going to work out for the best because they've kind of got to, right? This is where the relationship really starts to break down because you stop taking action. And just before I jump into the next one, if you do want more videos like this, then feel free to subscribe to the channel for new videos every single week. The next stage of a dying relationship is avoidance. So rather than addressing or communicating about any of the underlying discords within the relationship, the focus shifts to other areas like children or work. This is where couples become more like roommates or co-parents, and they start to lose that intimate connection between themselves. This is where discords start to build up, and there's an increased period of restlessness and anxiety and dissatisfaction within the relationship. And this is where each partner's focus can start to separate. So maybe one partner starts to focus more on the work and the other partner starts to focus more on the kids, where one or both partners start to focus on other parts of their life that they can control. One of the most pivotal stages in the death of a relationship is where one partner starts to recognize that their needs are starting to change. So they start to become tired because these discords are not actually being addressed. And they start to feel resentful. They start to feel like they're compromising, getting tired of never actually addressing issues because they know that they won't be resolved. One or both partners start to realize the gap that has grown between them both. You start to realize how different you are as a couple now from where you both started. The next stage is change. This is the realization that the relationship cannot continue as it is. And this is where there can be a fantasy of alternative relationships. This is where one or both partners start to consider other partners or other lifestyles as a solution to that gap that they feel, right? It's at this stage where they kind of doubt whether maybe counseling or coaching or any sort of intervention can salvage the relationship. Partners start to fantasize about another partner, another life. They start to become resentful about the relationship they're in because they feel like they're stuck. So this is where the acknowledgement comes that things have to change. And being able to navigate these stages are the skills that I work on with all of my successful Ultra Normal members. So if you do want to join us, then sign up for the free relationship bootcamp, where you'll learn the same steps to start turning your relationship around today, whichever stage you're at. Click on the link in the description to grab your spot. The stage that comes after that is increased conflicts and distance. So this is often where partners live separate lives with very little emotional connection. This is where the emotional safety, the intellectual intimacy, and the goal alignment have been fatally damaged. There's increasing arguments. There's a lot bigger conflicts. And these disputes between your partner's perspectives and realities become a lot more frequent. This is where one or both partners start to become aware of their own personal needs and start to think a bit more independently because they don't see the future of the relationship as sustainable. They start to feel protective and defensive defensive about themselves, and it becomes less of a teamwork and more every man for himself. This is where each partner starts to feel more empowered, looking away from the relationship than towards it, because they become more aware that they can't continue to do this. And then the biggest stage of all is where there's an ultimatum. So this stage is often where discussions about separation or divorce become serious. Maybe a partner drops the bombshell that they want to have a divorce or a separation. They want to break up. And this is where it feels like there's a last chance effort to salvage the relationship through some sort of counseling or coaching. And this is where one or both partners start to feel exhausted overall. They recognize that only a real overhaul can potentially save the relationship. This is where simple band-aids on the relationship are not going to cut it. The relationship needs a major overhaul for it to survive. And obviously no one really wants to get to this stage, but often we can mistakenly think that this stage is where it's completely over. It's irredeemable and the relationship cannot be saved. But all of these stages are simply levels of difficulty. The truth is that at any stage of the relationship breakdown, the relationship can be saved. It just gets harder the more you leave it. So even when things seem over, it just means that maybe your partner is feeling at the last stage, where something needs to happen. So stage 7 is difficult, but this is where your relationship is on life support. But don't mistake life support for death. So it feels like your partner is checked out completely. But the truth is, the relationship is redeemable. It's just going to take a lot more effort to turn it around. So the sooner you start to take action on your relationship and start to take the right steps to turn it around, the sooner the relationship will start to turn around. So obviously, taking action in the earlier stages is a lot easier than taking action in the later stages. But this doesn't mean that you shouldn't take action in the later stages. It just means that it's going to be a lot more difficult. So prevention is better than cure, but that doesn't mean that you can't cure it. A lot of the time as you're progressing through these stages, it can feel like your partner isn't doing anything to help the relationship. It can feel like the relationship is already doomed, even if it's at the early stages. But this is something called expectancy bias. So expectancy bias is where your partner has seen a trail of failed conversations and a buildup of discords, and this is what they start to expect. So it's really important to understand how to navigate expectancy bias in order to be able to overcome these discords. So expectancy bias is the human trait of resisting change. So when we change as people, especially when you've been in a relationship and it's been headed in a downward spiral, when one partner starts to change for the better, the other partner can internally resist it and start to expect the relationship to still be heading in the wrong direction. So this means that the other partner can subconsciously start to create more tension as the changes in the relationship start to appear. So it's really important to understand expectancy bias to be able to overcome it in order to save your relationship. And because of this expectancy bias, so you can feel like you're the only one putting in the effort. And like, well, what's the point, right? What's the point if my partner is already checked out? The fact is that you can actually turn your relationship around by yourself. The key is understanding what expectancy bias is and how to overcome it. And of course, when a relationship is dying and you don't see the exact same effort from your partner, it can feel like you're doing this all by yourself, right? And it can feel like, well, what's the point? I'm the only one that's trying here. And it can feel hopeless. But the truth is that you can turn your relationship around by yourself. And I actually made a deeper dive video into that. So I'll leave you with that and I'll see you over there.